Joining us on the line, I wonder if he's watched it, George C., CEO of Annandale Capital, Texas businessman and a former senior advisor to Marco Rubio's 2016 presidential campaign. George, did you watch The Last Dance on ESPN?
Every episode.
It was amazing, right? What'd you think of the final episode?
I loved every single one, including the final one. I thought that was spectacular documentary TV, and I totally appreciate Ken Burns' comment that he never would have done that show because Jordan had so much control over the content. But I don't think that show deified Jordan. It showed a lot of his faults and where he went wrong. But it's funny that he's come back into the consciousness because I've always used from an investment standpoint that I'm certainly not Michael Jordan, but that like Michael Jordan, when there's 3 seconds on the clock, I want the ball. Period in life every time.
I love that. So. I love that. See, I've always kind of imagined myself to be, more of an Allen Iverson type, but hey, who am I to judge? George, we've got a lot to talk.
You can't possibly be that tatted up. There's no way.
He's my favorite athlete of all time, Allen Iverson. Because when I was a kid, that he was in his peak. I wish they would do one on him. If they did, I would go insane. Anyway, the 30 for 30 on him is really good. Anyway, enough about that. George, what's going on in Texas? You're down there in Texas. What part of Texas are you at? You guys are open for business. Things are normal down there, aren't they?
Dallas, Texas, USA, we're wide open for business. You can only fill up a bar 25%, but basically everything else is turned back on.
See, that's now why is that? What do you attribute that to, just being down there? Because where I am in Washington, D.C., everything is basically still locked down and shut down. Nothing's open. And we're getting some word from Mayor Bowser, according to local reports and comments that she has made earlier today, that on Thursday they might be announcing phase 1 of how it would look should they begin to reopen on June 8th, but we still don't know. But it seems like we're trending in the right direction. But what are they pointing to down in Texas for why you guys have been able to reopen?
Well, I think part of it's luck, and I would say that quite a few big city mayors on the left have expressed quite a bit of discomfort that we're reopening, and some county judges as well. But I think the reality is Texas is lucky and big, both. We're lucky that the virus didn't hit us hard early, especially after Mardi Gras just made it explode in New Orleans. And we're also lucky to be big because we're so spread out that you could treat the state in a much more complex fashion than you can treat Los Angeles or Washington, D.C. or New York. They're so dense. There's communities like Dallas or Houston or San Antonio or Austin that are pretty dense and have high populations, and they have to be treated one way. But Gillespie County down in the Texas Hill Country in central Texas, where we've got a vacation home, they've had 2 cases of the virus total in the county. So you can treat that county like a whole different animal like that, as long as you don't have a whole lot of people coming in and out. And the governor from the beginning said, don't travel unless you have to. So the travel was cut down significantly. So I just don't think the virus has been able to spread very well down here. Now, next fall we're going to find out whether this thing explodes back into action like so many people predict. There's just so much unknown. It's a strange world we live in today because we're all guessing. Nobody knows.
So what
Dr. Fauci doesn't know. Dr. Birx doesn't know. President Trump don't know. They're all guessing.
So what about, one thing that has also been rocking the markets is energy, and especially with how the Saudi and Russia situation has played out. What are your observations on where things stand in the energy markets based upon all the latest developments with Saudi?
That's a great question. So I have viewed Saudi Arabia as a frenemy since 9/11, and I now would even remove the FR part of that. Since they joined Russia in taking that preposterous action, I think that we just need to completely reevaluate how we interact with the Saudis and not treat them like an open enemy like the Russians, but use them for when they suit our purposes, and otherwise pay as little attention to them as possible. We don't need their oil. The guy running the country now, the princeling, who's barely 30 plus years old, has proven
I'm
he's
30. For the record, I'm 30. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think he's 34, but I'm not sure. But He's proven himself to be completely incompetent and a very rash person as well. And if he maintains his hold on that country over the long term, I think it'll be a little miraculous, because he's made thousands of enemies in the royal family and thousands of enemies around the rest of the country by the heavy-handed approach he's taken and him locking them all up in that Ritz-Carlton at one point. So we in Texas feel this very, very strongly, because we are having a tremendous amount of economic pain down here, not just over oil, but we've got a huge healthcare industry down here, and they're all feeling the pain too. That's one of another ironies of the bug, the Wuhan bug, is that people don't realize that healthcare should be in the chips with all the new disease they have to treat and all the cases they have to treat, but nobody's going anywhere near a hospital right now. So a lot of for-profit hospitals and doctors' offices and all that are threatened with bankruptcy, just like so many other businesses.
George C's on the line. He is CEO of Annandale Capital. George, what would you say if you were in office right now? If you were an elected official, if you were governor of, I don't know, Texas, what would be the first thing that you do in order to kickstart the economy?
Gosh, I love questions like that. Well, the number one thing I would do would be to hold a daily press briefing where I spoke for no more than 5 minutes, and I let all the medical professionals give the update on everything else until we're through this crisis. And second, I wouldn't use my time to air every grievance I have in the world. I would use that time to encourage the American people and to provide empathy and mutual sorrow for those who've lost loved ones or have had people get really super sick on all that. And I would do my very best to encourage and give the FDR fireside chat kind of remarks where people come away feeling determined to get us all through this. On the economy,
compassionate conservatism. I'm hearing, wait, before you go on the economy, what I'm hearing is compassionate conservatism. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's where I live. That's the neighborhood I live in, period. And equal emphasis on both. No sacrifice of conservatism for compassion. I think Mike Gerson in particular is heavily criticized by the right for being kind of a big government, compassionate conservative. I'm not a big government advocate. I'm not a big spending advocate. Both C's, compassionate and conservative. So on the economy, we're in a really rough spot right now because our debt is getting so outrageously large that it's going to stultify economic growth and call for higher taxes for years to come to overcome this thing. So we can't keep spending like a drunken sailor forever. I'm completely behind everything that's been done so far by the government. It's been a really nice job. But I think the Fed is the entity that's really most responsible from here on out to keep things going. And Chairman Powell over the weekend said that he's got plenty of bullets left and there's nothing they can't do. And that's the main reason the market went up 900 points yesterday. So I would be just doing everything I could to encourage the Fed and stay out of its way, because I think the Fed's doing a great job.
All right. In 90 seconds that we have left, what about China? How is this going to impact the U.S.-China trade relations? And is there a way to get Europe back on board with the United States? Not even back on board, but just speaking from the same playbook as the U.S. when it comes to China?
I think that'll be difficult as long as the president's in office. I think he's really had a hard time connecting with the European leaders, or until there's a turnover in those chiefs of state. As for China, our bilateral relationship with the Chinese, who are an enemy of the United States, is going to be the number one foreign policy and domestic policy challenge I think we have in the next 50 years. And how we play that hand is going to determine greatly whether we continue to be the most powerful and most wonderful country in the world or we start to fade. And this Wuhan bug, and I don't have any problem calling it a Wuhan bug or a China bug because that's where it came from. And that's how we've done all these pandemics in the past. You name it after predominantly where it came from. And I think that both the Congress, the president, the military, and our economy have a huge challenge ahead in terms of facing off an enemy, China, but doing it in a way where we don't completely shut down trade with China and the way we interact with them.